British Ambassador to Azerbaijan Fergus Auld is a veteran diplomat. He joined the British Foreign Office in 1999. Fergus Auld was head of Commonwealth and South Asia Development and coordinator for India at the British Foreign Office. Since 2022, Fergus Auld has been Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of the United Kingdom to Azerbaijan.
Good morning, Mr. Ambassador. It is a privilege to be with you today. Today we're going to explore some of the pressing issues facing global diplomacy and the UK's role on the international stage. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me, Sevinch Hanım. Thank you to Baku TV for organising the interview, and welcome to the residents.
Diplomatic relations exist between Azerbaijan and Great Britain for more than 30 years. How do you assess the relations between the two countries?
Well, looking backwards, I see a relationship that for the last 30 years has been based on mutual trust, partnership, and of course the UK has been the largest foreign direct investor into Azerbaijan over that time. So that's a really strong foundation. Last year, trade and investment between the UK and Azerbaijan grew by over 20% to more than £1.5 billion. Last year, we saw more than 32% more Azerbaijanis coming to the UK to work, to study and to visit. And those are really positive indicators of the strength of the relationship. I look at the next generation of Azerbaijani leaders, people like the new Minister of Justice, lots of people working in the COP29 team, lots of them studied in the UK, and that's very positive as well. Of course, as the British ambassador here, I'm hungry for more. I want to see further growth in lots of areas of the relationship, but I think that we're starting from a really good place.
Has there been any change in Great Britain's foreign policy since Brexit towards Azerbaijan?
Well, of course, the UK-Azerbaijan relationship was never determined by our position as a member of the EU. Azerbaijan isn't a member of the EU otherwise. But multilateral organisations are an important part of our work on many issues together. Of course, we're both members of the United Nations, and this year it's the COP29 UN climate negotiations that are the most important thing there. We are both members of the Council of Europe and the Organisation for Security and Cooperation in Europe. And those are very important organisations for setting some of the benchmarks on issues like human rights that we both aspire to meet. We are both members of other organisations as well. Of course, Azerbaijan is not part of NATO, but it's an important NATO partner for peace, and both the UK and countries like Turkey, I think that's important too. And last of all, we're both part of quite a new European grouping, the European Political Community. And this July, the UK will be hosting the next Leaders Summit for the European Political Community in Blenheim Palace, where Winston Churchill grew up. And the British Prime Minister is hoping that President Aliyev will join us for that summit.
One of the largest energy companies operating in Azerbaijan is BP. Your company has been operating in our country for many years. What did BP's activity here give to Azerbaijan and Great Britain?
So last year was a really interesting year to be ambassador here in Azerbaijan, as you marked the centenary of Heydar Aliyev's birth and 30 years since he became president of Azerbaijan. And one of the things as we looked back 30 years and thought how far Azerbaijan had travelled over those 30 years was to look back to Heydar Aliyev's decision to welcome in international energy companies like BP and sign that contract of the century 30 years ago. That was really important in giving Azerbaijan its strategic autonomy with all of the external pressure it was facing at that time, but also in terms of laying the foundations for Azerbaijan's economic development. So BP has been a part of that story for over 30 years, as you say. But it's a part of the future story for Azerbaijan as well. BP has been important in helping the Azerbaijani government to develop its decarbonisation master plan. It has a plan to build a new solar power plant in Cebrail that will also help to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions from the Sangachal terminal. And BP has been important in developing the corporate culture in Azerbaijan. There's a fascinating list of people working in lots of different parts of government and business here who worked for BP at an earlier stage of their careers. And as the British Embassy and British Council, we're also very pleased to partner with BP on social and educational projects across Azerbaijan.
What steps are being taken to strengthen cooperation in the non-oil sector?
Well, when I mentioned the growth in trade and investment between the UK and Azerbaijan last year, part of that growth that we saw was in a number of different sectors of the economy. So, for example, in March, we had our first cybersecurity conference here in Azerbaijan with British companies coming to show what they are able to bring to the market. We also have a number of Azerbaijani delegations travelling to the UK in the next few weeks, covering sectors from museums and heritage to banking and fintech. I'm really excited about a new collaboration with the State Committee on Urban Planning and Architecture with a UK consortium looking at digital construction to make building here greener, more efficient. And with the British Chambers of Commerce in Azerbaijan, we have a number of working groups with parts of government here covering issues like tax and customs, which address some of the non-market barriers to doing business here. And that's really important because we think that a thriving private sector is key for innovation and competition to help grow the economy of Azerbaijan.
Azerbaijan is preparing to host COP29. Great Britain successfully hosted COP26. Can your country share this experience with Azerbaijan? In general, have there been negotiations between the two countries in this direction?
So, congratulations to Azerbaijan. It's a real honour to be hosting COP29 for the world. We know from our experience in COP26 that it's also a big responsibility and a real challenge. We had almost 2 years to prepare for hosting COP26, although because of COVID, we had our own complications, but we know that Azerbaijan has had less than a year to prepare. So we're already offering support in lots of different ways, both as the British government and British companies who are experts in organising events like this. I've been really impressed by how quickly the COP29 team have begun to get the arrangements in place and how quickly they've got up to speed with what are the most complex negotiations anywhere in the world. So I'm absolutely sure that Azerbaijan are going to do a great job in hosting it. And as I look at the COP29 team, I see lots of dynamic, diverse young people who I think are going to be the leaders of the country in the years to come.
What is the United Kingdom's current policy towards the recently recovered territories in Azerbaijan?
So we're very proud in the UK that we have been the first country really to get behind tackling the landmine problem in those territories. We've spent over £1 million in the last 3 years through government support, but actually the UK participation in mine action here in Azerbaijan is much broader than that. We've had partnerships with ANAMA and UNDP and UNICEF. We've had training organised by our Ministry of Defence with defence officials here. We've got British NGOs like the Mine Action Group, and British companies like RPS and SafeLane that have all been part of building the capacity for Azerbaijan to tackle this problem. I've seen, as I have travelled to different parts of those territories like Jebrail, Agdam, Fuzuli, Zangilan, Gubadli, every time I go back to the places that I've visited, I've seen how quickly the infrastructure is being developed and houses are being built that allow people to return to their homes, and that's very positive. There are British companies working in a number of different sectors in the recovered territories already. I mentioned BP and their solar plant in Jebrail. We've got companies like Chapman Taylor that are part of the design of master plans for some of the cities that are being rebuilt in those territories. We hope that we will see more British companies coming and working in the agricultural sector or providing vocational education. So there's lots of different UK companies that want to be part of that story. I think there's two other really important things to talk about with the recovered territories as well. The first is that if the return of people is going to be sustainable, that isn't going to be delivered just top down by the government alone. The government can build roads and it can build houses, but to build communities, you need to listen to people. You need partnership between government and business and civil society. You need especially to listen to women's voices because they're going to be key for building those communities. And the second thing is, that redevelopment won't be sustainable without peace and stability. I'm really pleased that it feels as if we are closer to peace between Azerbaijan and Armenia than we have been for over 30 years. And that's going to be critical if there's going to be sustainable growth and return of people. And what a wonderful thing if before COP29 this November, we were to see a peace agreement signed between Azerbaijan and Armenia. That would be really showing a new global Azerbaijan to the world.
Recently, there has been an increase in the number of flights between Baku and London. How do you see its contribution to the expansion of relations between the two countries and two peoples?
Well, as you say, Sevinj, there has been an expansion in the number of flights. There are now 6 flights a week between the UK and Azerbaijan, and I spent a very enjoyable morning
it suits you.
with Azal a few weeks ago to celebrate that. Of course, for a British ambassador, one of the important things that I like to see is not just the discussion that takes place between the British government and the Azerbaijani government. It's the people-to-people connections that really bring a bilateral relationship to life. So that could be British tourists coming to Azerbaijan to see the amazing sights and countryside there are here. I was in Nakhchivan just a week and a half ago and it was fantastic. It's about business people traveling in both directions to increase prosperity on both sides. And of course, having direct flights between London and Baku really helps with that.
We see that Azerbaijani graduates have achieved significant success after graduating from British universities. Can the creation of special programs for Azerbaijani students to study at UK universities be a topic of discussion? In general, what is the state of the relations between the two countries in the field of education? What steps can be taken to further develop these relations?
That's a great question, and education is one of the top priorities for me as British ambassador here in Azerbaijan. Just 2 days ago, I met with the Minister for Science and Education. As ever, he was full of energy, full of ideas, really keen to deliver improvements in education here in Azerbaijan. And in a few days' time, he will be visiting the UK to attend the Education World Forum for the 8th time, which is fabulous. I'm really pleased that so many talented young Azerbaijanis choose the UK to carry on their studies. Last year, we saw almost 30% more Azerbaijanis coming to study in the UK than they did in 2022. So that's really fast growth. And we're really honoured that 60% of the state-sponsored scholars who are studying overseas this year are studying in the UK at universities across the country. The British Council has been helping Azerbaijani universities also to develop how they're looking at transnational education and improving their offer to students and researchers from outside of Azerbaijan. And the British Council are working with English language teachers as well. There's a programme that the British Council run that has already engaged about half of the entire number of English language teachers in Azerbaijan. The British Council is also organising exams in English language and other professional qualifications which help young Azerbaijanis to develop their careers. So there's lots of different elements to the relationship between the UK and Azerbaijan on education already, and I'm sure that that will continue to grow. Actually, this evening I'm hosting a reception in this residence for the British Council's regional director with friends and partners from universities, from schools, from arts and culture who have been part of the British Council story in Azerbaijan for over 30 years now.
Mr. Ambassador, how does Great Britain plan to support peace initiatives in other regions such as the South Caucasus? What lessons has Great Britain learned from its involvement in Ukraine? Because many sources believe that Great Britain has not defined a correct and effective strategy in the Ukraine-Russia war.
So, I mean, we have been in the South Caucasus. We're very pleased to offer what support we can to Azerbaijan and Armenia to deliver that peace agreement that I mentioned that we hope that we will see signed. But the most important thing is that Azerbaijan and Armenia themselves are talking at all the different levels. We'll see the foreign ministers meeting in Kazakhstan in a few days' time, and we hope that both President Aliyev and Prime Minister Pashinyan will be at that leaders summit I mentioned in the UK in July, and that they will be able to talk as well. But of course, it's less important what external countries like the UK are able to do than for government and for all leaders at all levels of Azerbaijani and Armenian society to come together. In terms of Ukraine, the UK is really proud to have supported Ukraine in the face of Russia's horrific illegal invasion 2 years ago, and to help Ukraine to defend itself in the face of that invasion. We're proud that we have been able to offer both military support to Ukraine to help it defend itself in line with the UN Charter, but also to provide support in humanitarian areas and with the help with the reconstruction of the country as well. We provided a security guarantee to Ukraine that shows that our support is not something that is going to end. We look at the partnership with Ukraine as a fundamentally important one. And we're really pleased that Azerbaijan has also offered its political support and its humanitarian support to Ukraine, as we see the horrific Russian attacks on energy infrastructure in Ukraine that are having a real impact on ordinary civilians' lives. It's very valuable that Azerbaijan continues to provide support for energy infrastructure in Ukraine. And we're pleased that the Azerbaijani foreign minister was able to attend the Ukraine Recovery Conference that we hosted in the UK last year, and that there will be Azerbaijani representation at this year's Ukraine Recovery Conference that the Germans will host next month. So that's a really important part for us bringing stability and security to the region at a time where Russia has really made the region less secure and less stable.
Karabakh horses also participate in Royal Windsor Horse Show. Karabakh horses have always been in the center of attention at this event. Karabakh horse was even presented to the royal family many times by Azerbaijan. In 2022, the Karabakh Horse Show Rat, presented to the late Queen Elizabeth II, was presented at Windsor Castle. This indicates the depth of Azerbaijan-Great Britain relations. We would like to hear your thoughts on this.
Well, one of the most difficult things when I arrived in Azerbaijan in my first month was the death of Her late Majesty, Queen Elizabeth II. There's a lovely memory from a few months before she died. As part of her Platinum Jubilee celebrations to mark 70 years on the throne, she attended the Windsor Horse Show that year in 2022. And Her Majesty loved horses more than almost anything else, apart from perhaps her corgi dogs. There's a lovely picture of Her Majesty receiving the gift of that Karabakh horse that you mentioned, and she's got a huge smile on her face from the beautiful present. The Karabakh horses were actually performing in the Windsor Horse Show just a few days ago in the UK, performing in the rain, unfortunately. It's been a wet spring in the UK, just like here in Azerbaijan. But as ever, they amazed everyone with the riders' skill and the wonderful horses that were there. Actually, one secret, one of my bedrooms upstairs here in the residence is named after two horses that were presented by Azerbaijan to the UK, Zaman and Golden Boy. So it's an enduring connection between the UK and Azerbaijan.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you for taking the time to discuss these important issues with us today. We appreciate your openness in addressing these complex topics.
Well, thank you again, Sevinch, for coming to the residence today and interviewing me, and thanks to Baku TV. It's been a pleasure.
It's a pleasure for me. Thank you.